Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video we're going to be talking about some talent news coming in Midnight. So basically in Midnight they're going to be adding talents that we can use. So they're going to be adding talents to the actual class tree for your class. They're going to be adding talents, literally new talents, not just talent points, to your spec tree. And then they're going to be adding another row of talents for your hero talent tree. So let's look at this real quick. So 10 new talent points total. Oh, it's 4 points in the spec tree, excuse me. It's 3 points in the class tree. Now these are just on top of what you already have. So without any new talents, you're going to get 3 more points. 3 points in the hero talent tree. So we'll look at what this looks like. But this is just another line, just expanding the hero talent trees out one more width or whatever. And then 4 points into the spec tree. The class tree will not have anything new. Fourth lane of new talents for every hero. Excuse me. The apex talents are the ones that are going to be in your spec tree. That you do not have to take them. You can put them into other points, but they're going to be designed to be powerful enough that you're probably going to want to take them. At least that's their goal. Of course, when people aren't taking them, they'll probably buff them, right? In that case, we can kind of see what it looks like here from their YouTube video here on World of Warcraft YouTube. And you can see there's, well, the 1, 2, 3, I don't know what that means, but over here, you just get 3 more points. Over here, you can see, you know, it might not be super clear because it's so small, but there's 4 columns instead of 3 columns, right, for the hero talents. And then over here, you can see some extra talents down here. And then maybe down here, I don't even know what's new because this is a new this is the Demon Hunter thing. But there's like extra talents to the side. Now I don't know if those where the apex ones are going to be, or if they're going to integrate them in to the actual talent tree itself. And this is just like a quick mock-up that they could show something. I'm not sure, but that's how it's going to kind of be. So obviously you get all of your hero talent stuff still. I'm sure. I guess I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's how that'll be. So you'll still get to get those talent points as you level up. I'm guessing it's going to be 1 per level, right? You'll get a class, a hero, and a spec or whatever, and then it'll on the 10th level you'll probably get your apex top talent or whatever. So in this video I wanted to kind of discuss if this is a good thing. Am I interested in it? Because, you know, most people's reaction is, okay, that's cool, let's see how this goes. This is going to be something cool. They really want the apex talents to be thematic and stuff, so some people are very open-minded to that, like, cool, let me see it. But there's another side of things where some people are, you know, saying it could be bloat. I kind of wanted to give both of those things some talk. So I'm just going to pop open my talents here. I happen to be on Herald of the Sun, Ret Paladin. That's my main character if you're not Ret Paladin yourself here. And I have the Paladin class tree, of course, as well. So basically I'd get 3 more points into here. So as a Ret Paladin, this isn't going to do much for me. You know, I could take a little bit more healing that doesn't actually do very much healing. I could just have all of my Mythic Plus stuff taken as well. Like I could have Blinding Light, you know, I could have Cleanse taken even though I don't need it for a raid or whatever, right? If I'm in a raid spec right now. So you could kind of take stuff that maybe you normally wouldn't take and just always have it. That's the only thing I could really see a huge benefit for me. But maybe other class trees. In fact, I play enough alts to know that other class trees do have other things you'd like to take. I know Mage has things that you would take if you could. But on the Paladin tree, you can take all the damage stuff really easy. And so you're just kind of choosing other points for fun, I guess. And the hero, so this is largely going to be inconsequential for some, but actually consequential for others. And so they'll have to find a way to balance that because it's going to allow things like I said, like Mage, for example, is a good one. Druid's another one. To have a lot, well, 3 more things than what they normally would have. And they have a lot of choices, unlike Paladin, where you pretty much grab your freedom, your bop, and your sacrifice, and that's kind of your utility. You kind of just grab those 3 things and you have your utility. That's about all the utility you get. And there isn't really much else to worry about. So you just always have the few things that you have access to, and you're not missing out on anything cool or powerful by taking them. Whereas other classes are. So other classes are going to get more powerful this way. It's going to be a bit of a power grab. So I think that has some balancing implications. But other than that, I'm fine with it. I think it'd be more interesting to extend the tree and give 3 more points, like put 3 more points into every tree or something. But again, that doesn't work out because not every class tree is the same. Some class trees have a lot more stuff already. So, you know, that is what it is, I guess. I guess it's basically throwing a bone to the class trees that have tons of stuff that they can't get all of it. Whereas for Paladin, well, at least for Ret Paladin, maybe for Holy or Prot, it's a little bit different. But for Ret Paladin, it largely is completely inconsequential. We already have basically 3 talent points that don't really matter at all. You know, at least 3 that don't really matter at all. So now we'll have 6 that don't really matter at all for my spec specifically. When it comes to the hero talent things, I think this is the most obvious thing, what I kind of expected them to do. Not necessarily adding the 3 talent points, but kind of extending the hero talents out. That's because the hero talents were the new thing for the War Within, right? We had the talent trees for Dragonflight. The hero talents were new. Everyone kind of likes them, except for the people that have really bad choices, which a few classes do. Have a few specs definitely do, but some classes have some bad trees. Ret's started off strong, but Herald has been completely forgotten about for Ret Paladin, and Templar is actually pretty good overall. So I can't complain too much about Templar. But I expected them to kind of, you know, work on these, expand on these a little bit, and they are. So that is happening. So, you know, like we just saw in the video, still image there. There's going to be 3 more talents here. I expect these to modify how the hero talents play even more and bind them in with your other abilities even more. In fact, I think they even might have mentioned that on their panel, and kind of just blend it into your spec even more than it already is. And that's what they'll do there. It'll gain you some amount of power. These probably won't be super high powerful in most cases, but maybe in some cases they will be, especially the underperforming ones. I could see that happening. When we get to the spec thing, this is where you know, this is where you actually might get a little bit of power, right? Or maybe a lot of power, right? And so they're going to add new talents, and they advise you taking them. They're called the Apex talents or whatever, or maybe the final one's the Apex one, but maybe you have to take the ones before it to get to the Apex one. And so you'll, whether it's going to be to the side like we saw in the still image, or if they're going to integrate it into your spec tree, there's going to be these new talents, and they're going to probably give you, you know, a good chunk of your power. And because they're framing this as Apex talents, it also has the opportunity to be this thing that they kind of did with hero talents already. I think this is what the part that a lot of people who are not liking this idea aren't really thinking about. These Apex talents are going to hold a certain percentage of power, and it's going to be easy to tune specs around these Apex talents instead of messing with how their class plays. And you know, I'm on my Ret Paladin, which is my main, but it's the perfect one to be on for this actually. So Divine Hammer was a talent that was added and, you know, modified and made really, really cool and powerful and undermined for Ret Paladin. But it was so powerful. Like this was a ridiculously powerful talent. This was like an Apex talent in the last patch. And they nerfed it really bad, and it absolutely killed the damage and changed the play style of Ret Paladin, right? And in some ways they needed to do it, but in other ways they didn't, right? But I think they don't like this being here and being something that completely changes your play style, right? So this could be a potential thing to move to the Apex talents and, you know, give it a little bit extra power and a little bit of more changing your play style, and then, you know, balance it from there, right? Like that's like just one example of something that they could do. And I will guess that they will probably balance around, just like they balance around hero talents a lot. They can balance around these Apex talents, and actually, so some people are like, it's making their jobs harder, it's more and more bloat, but I think in the way that they're doing it, it's actually less. If they designate a certain amount of power to each thing, and that's what I think they're kind of doing here. Like your spec talents are going to give you this much power, your hero talents should give you this much power, these Apex talents will give you this much power, and then they can always tune those within a certain amount, right? Instead of the old system, which was like multiplicative in a lot of ways, I think this is going to be a little bit different than that. Like when we just kept adding systems on systems on systems, like the glyph system and the reforging on top of the regular talents, on top of every other system that they added, you know, so many over the years, right? Or just in one expansion, they had the Heart of Azeroth, and then you had the glyphs for that, and then you had corruptions and stuff. And that's stuff that they still add, but I think they go about it differently. And that's why I'm not as worried about it, because instead of making it purely like at a developer's whim, it's like, no, you have to have it within this percentage of damage. I think they use the numbers more, essentially, which maybe they should have always been doing that. If they were always doing that, we'd probably still have glyphs and stuff like that from the past that people liked, if they were always doing it in this way. But I don't think they were. And that's why they had such a hard time balancing it. That's just my opinion, because they've been much better at balancing overall. And I say this as a Ret Paladin who's currently completely overlooked and terrible at single target damage. You know, overall, the other, like, there's like 6 classes that are like super strong in raid, at least like 6 specs at least that are super strong in raid, and there's arguably more than that. And it's like, and all of them feel really good to play, right? And anybody be like, well, that's only 6 out of whatever. But I'm talking about like Apex, like the absolute best. And it might be more like 10, really. Like 10 specs feel amazing to play raid. It might even be more than that, right? And a lot of times in the past, it's like 1 or 2 feels really good to play in raid. So that's what I'm getting at with that. So overall, my take is, I think this is good. Like, they have to add something, right? Just like they added the hero talents for this, they, in my opinion, I thought they were just going to maybe make this a little bit longer and maybe expand it as well. Not too big, you know, but a little bit bigger. And that's what I figured we would get for this. So getting these extra talent points, you know, it's interesting. It's not really going to change much, because again, for the class trees, you're just adding 3 talents that you already have. For your hero talents, it could be a little bit interesting at least. And then you're not really adding points to your preferred spec or whatever. You are just putting those talents into these new Apex things. And so the Apex things, while masquerading as talents on your spec side, are actually just a new little system, a new little glyph or whatever, right? That's a glyph system that they're putting onto your talents, and you're not really getting a choice in them, so you don't have to worry about balancing different glyphs. It's just, these are your glyphs, whatever. I'm calling them glyphs just, you know, to make it comparable to another system back in the day, right? And so that's why I think it's largely okay. Does it technically make tuning harder? Yeah, but if they can get the tuning right with this stuff, which they largely do, people can say it's not tuned or whatever, and I get it, but if you look at the actual breakdowns, it's actually pretty dang tuned. Like, especially for single target. When you get into AoE, it starts to vary a little bit more, but the single target is actually pretty tuned correctly. And so I don't think ultimately just adding these new Apex talents is going to ruin that. They even tuned it correctly around the corruptions, which those weren't a ton of power. But like these other, like the bells, they've added other power items in the game, and it's been fine. I think it's largely just going to be like that. They just do things a little bit differently now, which I think is by the numbers. So ultimately, I'm fine with it. I'm definitely open-minded to it, and I don't think it's going to be all this bloat. People are worried about adding more buttons, which is a real thing. They pruned a lot of buttons from some specs. Some still have a lot. You know, I don't, in my current build here, I think I'm only using, I can actually tell you just by looking. In my current build, I'm only effectively using like 24 keybinds at any time, which is a lot, right? That's still a lot of keybinds. I'm only effectively using 24, maybe arguably 23 for any given task or whatever that I'm doing, and that's including like my bop and stuff like that, right? I don't even have my sack on my bar, so that could be one more. But I don't normally play with sack on this build. But anyways, like, yeah, that's buttons, so I don't really want to add more buttons to that. At one point I was at 28 keybinds. That was the most that I had ever, was running 28 keybinds of keys that I actually press all the time. Not just 28 keybinds, just 28 that I use all the time, that are very easy for me to use. And yeah, that's too many. And so getting back to that would not be great. So I understand that. So hopefully if there's an Apex talent system or whatever, hopefully it's only like one more button to press. That would be good. And more pruning is fine as well, in my opinion, overall, especially when your spec has a lot of, or class has a lot of utility stuff that you need to press, like Blessing of Freedom. I had to use that on tons of bosses this raid. I have to use it in Mythic Plus. I have to use it all the time. I use it just for speed because they made it a speed increase, right? So Blessing of Freedom, that's a utility, but I'm using it all the time. Bop, I'm using that all the time. Cleanse, I'm using that all the time, right? When I take it for a Mythic Plus, it's because I need to use it, and so I'm using it all the time. And you can say it's utility. Stun, again, in Mythic Plus, you're using that all the time. Blind, in Mythic Plus, you're using it all the time. Lay on Hands, I'm using it all the time. So these are things that I'm using all the time. My own bubble, I'm using it all the time. You know, Battle Res, Intercession, I'm using it all the time. So these aren't things that I'm just using sometimes. I'm using these a lot, right? And so when you have that many utility buttons that you kind of are expected to have, because why, it's the only thing that makes your class unique, right? Or whatever you bring to the group. So if you don't have that, I do think you have to factor that in, right? And Ret does not have a lot of buttons to press for DPS. For DPS, we literally have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then plus trinket or potion if you have that bound or whatever. It's not a lot of buttons to press for DPS. It's just a lot of buttons for everything else. It's kind of the problem with playing Ret Paladin, especially in a dungeon. It's not a problem as long as you can handle that many keybinds, but it is a problem for new players. I will say that for sure. So, do I think there's potential for bloat to happen in World of Warcraft again? Absolutely. Do I think that they need to work on lowering buttons, not necessarily for Ret, but for other specs? Absolutely. I think that they need to continue to work on lowering buttons. It'd be fine if they prune defensives more as well. That's something that they've talked about doing. That'd be one less defensive. So I have 2 defensive buttons. I would only have 1 in that case, right? So that's 1 less button. But yeah, I would love to see that personally, but I just don't know exactly how they get there. Flash of Light plus having my Wog, that's 2 different little heals as a Ret Paladin, but I kind of like having both of them, to be completely honest. But again, that's just an extra button. So I'm open to have the discussion about bloat, but I ultimately don't think this is going to directly lead to bloat. I think if you're taking the stuff in your class tree that gives you extra buttons, that could potentially give you 3 extra buttons there, an apex button, so that could give you 4 extra buttons. And if you're playing something that already has a lot of buttons, 4 more buttons is a lot more. And so that's something that they have to look at on the class tree design, and how much utility and defensives that each class has as well, buttons are expected to have. And of course, let's be clear here, if we're removing utility and we're removing stuff or pruning it, we have to lower. If we have less defensives, the content can't be as punishing, right? Because we have no way to survive it. Like, that's obvious, right? So it's an ebb and flow, it's a give and take, but I'm largely optimistic about it personally. We'll see. If somebody's playing a druid and they gain 4 more buttons and they're like, look at all these keybinds I have, how am I supposed to manage this? Then I totally get that. And I was a big person who was against the bloat back in the day too. And so if the bloat does happen, I will be, clamoring against it. I'm just very open-minded for it as of now, but I am prepared to be like, this is too many buttons. So we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, that'll be it for this one, guys. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.